In Dan and His Van episode 16, I'm going to talk today about effects. Now, what I mean about those are sound effects that you'd use on recording, like reverbs and chorus and all of that sort of thing. Now, I'm going to be making a series of videos detailing each one and how it can be used creatively in a mix. However, there are two types of effects, really, for my mind. You have effects that are creative, like, chorus or delay and reverb and that sort of thing. And then you have effects that are corrective, things like EQ and compression and noise gates and things like that that help to alleviate problems in a mix. Now, it's very important to, at this stage, before we look at any effects, is to think, do you need them? Now, of course, things like, if you listen to sort of early Beatles records, there's not really much on them at all because there really wasn't anything available. You'd have things like tape echo, perhaps, but that was a tape recorder which had several heads on it, and you'd run the signal through one head and then the tape would go over the other heads, and that's how you get your delay. Now, of course, everything is digital now. When I started recording, I had a 4-track cassette recorder. It was one of those little Tascam Porter studios, and it was brilliant. It changed my life. It did so much for my sort of creative outlet, really, with music. For the first time, I could overdub myself and be able to listen back to several of me at once, and it was mind-blowing, really, for the time. Now, I had one effects device with it, which was the Alesis Quadraverb, which was actually quite a lot better than the machine that it was serving. I still have that Quadraverb, and it's still got its own sound. So you could only use you could use 4 effects at once, but you could only you have one reverb, for example. You couldn't set 2 different reverbs on different tracks. Not like you can do now with any of the digital audio workstations that we got, whether it be Logic or Cubase, FL Studio, Ableton Live or GarageBand for iOS, for example. That should be mentioned because it's a free application for the iPad and iPhone, and it's really, really good. I've done lots and lots of tuition videos about those, so check them out on my channel. So I'm going to make a series of short videos about each effect, and so I'll stick those in a playlist, and then hopefully I'll be able to sort of show a couple of examples of when it can and when it's a little bit over the top, and things as corrective tools as well, because it all really needs to be sort of treated with caution. I like early 70s funk music. I really like that genre. I like jazz. I like gypsy jazz. Now, that gypsy jazz, that's a slightly different ballgame because of the recording quality. Now, I recently road tested a couple of plugins from Audio Thing. One was a vinyl strip, which simulates a vinyl record and all the imperfections that go with it. And the other was a tape recorder and all the imperfections that go with it. And then I got a slightly polarized response with these plugins. People saying, what are you doing? Why would you opt to make something sound worse than it was when you recorded it to computer? Well, genres like gypsy jazz, for example, Django Reinhardt, almost all of his output was on 10-inch shellac records, which are themselves quite a poor medium. It's all mono, it's all crackly, all surface noise and all of that sort of stuff. Even his tape recordings of the early 1950s, they are all, of course, in mono because that's what existed at the time. So making recordings in mono with record crackle there's nothing wrong with it. And indeed, some genres may benefit from this sort of these imperfections, which are simulated all over all of these iOS plugins or AU plugins or VST instruments. So many of them have, buttons marked sort of grit or dirt or a lo-fi or something like that. I did a reggae album where the library company wanted it to be a little bit manky, really. So can you make it sound a bit lo-fi? So I just, I mastered it through a 1/4-inch tape recorder. This is stuff that's been recorded to a computer. We should never discount lo-fi effects, but we should always be careful of any effects that we use, that we're not going over the top, or that we're not it's not for the effect's sake. It's for the music. That's what it's always about. So here is a little introduction, and I shall be making some videos about all of these effects.